Captain Picard. Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
My Readier Room.
Hello and welcome to the Readier Room, the only, longest running, highest quality, and best acted Star Trek The Next Generation rewatch podcast. Every week we're coming at you with an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation and behind the scenes stories of how the episode is put together and all the lore you could ever shake a stick at. My name is Mitchell Mells, Chief Consultant Services at Paramount, and with me as always is my life partner Brandon Hobbs. How are we doing today, Brandon?
Oh, Mitch. Well, I'm doing okay. There are some days like today where you get out of bed and you kind of wonder, why am I doing this?
Yes.
Right. But, then I think of our thousands of fans.
Tens of thousands, really.
Tens of thousands, just as many Patreon subscriptions. The t-shirts, all of the good that we're doing for the community, and I remember, why we started doing this in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. The t-shirt sales alone were enough to fund this brand new studio that we're recording in.
Yes.
So there's many ensigns that we have to thank. They know who they are, so I won't really bother, but it's all possible thanks to you listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
You make it happen.
So thank you.
You make it happen. Ensigns run the world.
You make it so.
That's a t-shirt.
Yeah, it's a t-shirt. Look for that on the store in the coming weeks.
Yeah, what is our store? Is it Etsy?
No, it's Teespring.
Ah, Teespring. I see.
Yeah. Teespring.readierroom.net.
Write that down, you guys listening to this at home, so you can get your latest Set Phasers to Fun t-shirt.
Yep. Pencil it into your Rolodex. Make sure you don't lose it.
So, So, thank you to the many ensigns out there, and even the lieutenants of the world, the lieutenant commanders. So, today, before we get into our very special episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, we have a very specialer question of the week from a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And this week's question of the week comes from Mads. I hope I'm saying that right. Mads in South Africa. I hope I'm saying that right. Africa? And
there you go.
Yeah, Mads asks, what are your thoughts on the controversial Admiral Jennings? Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh no.
Why didn't we see more of him after season 3? Thank you for everything you do. Readier Ensign out. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, which is weird in a way because it comes up very, very often at conventions and such. So it's something I'm used to being asked. However, I have no lack of interest in it. There's some topics where people ask you and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. No, I can talk about this for a very, very long time, and I'll have to kind of stifle myself because we have a show to do, but yes, Admiral Jennings. So, I love this character. To me, this character was unlike really anyone else that we wrote into the show, any of the other guest characters. And despite only being in a few episodes, I think he's very, very memorable. Particularly his relationship with Wesley. Like, there was this weird kind of tension, I suppose, between their mentor-mentee relationship that was the pretext to everything, and on the other end, like, the more subtle, dark grooming that was going on between the two. It was a much darker, more real dynamic than we really ever had between two characters on the show before, where everything else up until that point had been more idealistic. But to cut a long story short, why didn't we see him after a couple seasons? It's mostly, you get enough people to write letters about something, and they're going to end up getting their way. People just didn't take very kindly to this, older man, younger boy, dark relationship on network television,
which is a shame. I mean, it's so real. It's reflective of a lot of things that actually happen. A lot of the way life kind of works.
Right.
Especially in our circles.
Well, that's the thing. When this comes out of Hollywood, right? Like this show didn't just spring into existence. It was made in Hollywood, and it was made by people who either have first or secondhand experience with this kind of thing, and it's their way of speaking out. But what people see it as, from an audience perspective, is just, oh, that's kind of gross or icky.
Right.
They don't get how A, this is shedding light on something, and B, this is very cathartic for the people involved. I mean, especially Will Wheaton.
Right.
Will really was struck when he saw these scripts, because this was giving him a voice to bring this to the attention of a wider audience. And what did they do? They just slapped it down and said, we don't want to see this. We don't really care about your problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that it's like, yeah, Admiral Jennings, controversial character, because he's not really written to be all that likable or relatable, because, he's doing these seedy things. But that's not, in my mind, that's not justification for removing an element from a show just because it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, as long as it has a point to make, and this character certainly did.
Sure. It's really just a failure on the audience's part to really think critically about anything, which, I mean, it is Star Trek, so
right.
Understandable.
Yeah. It's still disappointing, though. Because when your audience fails to connect with a philosophical debate about the nature of what makes something a life, is data alive, whatever. They don't really engage with that. It's disappointing and embarrassing, an embarrassing
Yes.
look for them. However, it's not all that consequential. However, when they fail to connect with the very real exploitation of children, minors, that's a lot more upsetting and a lot harder to swallow.
Right. Yeah. It's basically kind of shoving your head into the sand and pretending it doesn't exist. And I guess it was just too much of a reminder for the audience that by buying their little Star Trek phasers and their Spock ears, that they were kind of silently allowing this to happen.
Yeah, I buy that. It goes beyond a simple ignorance, and is more of more malicious in nature. The tacit approval of exploitation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as homosexuals ourselves, this really struck a chord with us as well.
Right. Right.
So it was a disappointment.
Yeah, I think that this whole mentor-mentee relationship is a cornerstone of homosexual culture.
Yep.
So to see it not land, I can count the ways it's frustrating. So we don't have that much time.
That's more for our politics podcast.
Yeah, the rare times that our politics podcast intersects with the Trek podcasts. Can you do me a favor and just plug the politics podcast real quick?
Sure.
You do the spot so much better than I do.
Right. Yeah. So it's called the New Comrade. We discuss politics. We discuss communist literature. of course, Mitch and I come from a long line of socialist and communist thought. We got into it in Hollywood, of course, back in our 20s. I forgot who it was who handed us the manifesto.
I think it was LeVar, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah, and we'd start by having these little meetings, these little round tables, just a few of us on the team, and we really got into it, you and me, Mitch, and ultimately it's about guiding the country to what we think is a better tomorrow,
Right.
And that generally has to do with taking things away from people who we think don't deserve it.
And I feel pretty qualified to make that judgment. And hopefully you guys put your trust in us and just follow kind of where we direct you to go, which is very much appreciated from the ensigns.
And that's what we do here as well. So
indeed,
it shouldn't take too much learning, going from one podcast to the other.
Well, that's just kind of what podcasts are, right? It's letting somebody else give you some amount of direction and guidance in life that you just can't get on your own.
Yeah, sure. And a lot of the time what podcasts are good for too is, you can, as an audience member, watch a podcast, and then you can post on the internet about whatever niche topic the podcast just brought up, as if it was kind of your own thought.
Yes, exactly.
Which is a real trip.
Do you remember?
I know lots of people love that.
Do you remember back in our heyday of going to parties in Hollywood, and it was the biggest social faux pas whenever two women wore the same dress, for example?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, in the new age, these days, it's more about if two people have listened to the same podcast and bring up the same topic. It's quite embarrassing for both of them.
It certainly is. That's a good analogy.
So the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Mm-hmm. But that's why it's good to kind of have a pulse on all kinds of different podcasts.
If you guys,
so that no one can really tell what you listen to.
If you guys want some free advice, I would recommend playing ignorant. So if you're out at your next social gathering, your socially distanced gathering, and you're talking about Admiral Jennings, and someone says, "Oh, did you listen to the Readier Room this week?" Just say no. Just be, what's that? The Readier Room? No, I only know the Readier Room.
Yeah. They can't prove it.
Exactly, and then they will think that that was your thought. And you'll look
they're going to feel like a big nerd too.
Exactly, because they'll be, oh, no, it's nothing.
Right.
I don't know. There's no Readier. No.
They'll start sweating.
Right, and then you can have a laugh at their expense.
Or expanse, depending on how fat they are.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Which, if they're listening to the Readier Room, then
yeah, the chances
probably
are
a good chance they're up there.
Yeah, we did the polls, and the average BMI of our listening fan base is quite a high number.
Yeah. Although we did compare results with our friends over at the Orb.
That's true.
And we got about the same results.
Well, the thing about the orb being a spherical entity is that it attracts that shape.
Yeah, people gravitate towards the name.
Yeah. So
we didn't account for that in our thesis.
I'm 100% certain that if we polled the Ladies of Trek listening fan base, that our fan base would be slimmer by a factor of 10 at least.
Yeah, I could see that. I think ultimately, no matter how you cut it, that is just the fan base of Trek, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
All I know is
we
that
support.
when I go to buy Picard cosplay outfits, I can only find the sizes of small and medium, and everything else is sold out.
Right. Yeah. Which is fine for us because
that's true.
You know.
You'd be surprised how many X's you can put in front of an L.
Yeah, I don't think I really want to know.
I mean, it looks kind of illicit, right? The only other time I ever buy something that has 3X's in it, I'm wearing like a trench coat and sunglasses.
All I know is once you get past XL, it's madness.
Indeed.
You might as well be wearing a trash bag.
It's kind of like buying a tent to go camping.
Yeah, sort of. You should just do that and then go live in the woods so no one has to see you.
You see, the thing about camping is that it's a lot of fun, but way too much work to ever realistically do.
Well, that's not true. You're just high maintenance, Mitch.
Well, I need everything to be temperature controlled. I need to make sure there's a solid 3-meter radius where there's no insects.
Well, yeah, so they have stuff for that now. They have like new technologies. I mean, have you ever been in a trailer? Pull the old trailer out to the campsite and.
So for somebody like me who has all these paradoxically high standard rules, I don't think that using a trailer qualifies as camping.
Right, and that is true. That's an issue where you're really stretching the definition of kind of like, I guess camping in general. But
it's
where does camping end?
When you do not have to construct the thing that you're sleeping in. That's where camping ends.
I guess.
It's very similar.
I don't really argue with that.
It's very similar to so people like, oh, I love camping. I got my RV, my camping car, and I go out and just sleep in it. That is very similar to people like, oh yeah, I love coffee, and then they go buy like a macchiato whatever,
right? Which is completely degenerate.
Exactly. It's just, let's just inject a bunch of sugar straight into your veins.
But when you're city slickers like us, sometimes you want to go out into the wilderness, and it doesn't really matter how you're sleeping. It's just a matter of kind of waking up in the morning and seeing that there's no one really around you.
What I like to do is to drive out into the woods and just kind of hang out until about 11 p.m. Drive home and then drive back at 5 a.m. and pretend I slept there.
That's a pretty good idea. Yeah. I'm partial to, of course, this obviously, setting up camp in front of Mount Fuji.
Yes.
Getting my little grill out, cooking my meat on it, kicking back, reading a book.
Very comfy.
But by myself, of course.
Of course. I've tried to tag along before, but I've been rebuffed.
Right.
The thing about Mount Fuji is that I like to call him Mr. Fuji.
Right.
Just as a translation of his name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
it's a very polite mountain.
Yeah. You want to make sure you're being respectful.
Always. So I want to close by saying that to other people out there like me who are fans of Admiral Jennings, I don't want to say too much, but keep watching the stars on Picard Season 2.
Mm-hmm.
You might have something you'll enjoy.
This is in no small part thanks to you, of course. I know, having known you for decades now, Jennings was kind of the first thing you talk about in the morning and the last thing you talk about at night.
I had to call in a lot of favors.
Mm-hmm. I know your love for this character, and it makes me happy finally getting to see what I guess became our dream come back to life in this way, and I think the audience is gonna love it.
Yeah, I remember the actor who played Jennings showed up to set, and I patted him on the back, and I'm like, "Let the legend come back to life."
Yes,
and he went off to film his scenes. Very exciting times that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely exciting.
Yep. Lots of big changes, lots of new things.
Changes. Anyway, thank you, Mads, for the question. If you guys at home have a question that you want us to answer on a weekly basis, then you can email them to us, thereadierroom@gmail.com. That's with a capital T, a capital R, and another capital R. Or you can DM us on Twitter at the Readier Room. So make sure you're spelling Readier correctly. There's a duplicate imposter account running around that we can't quite get banned yet, but just make sure that your spelling is correct. And we'll answer your question if it's good. All right. So, this week we're talking about an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. This episode is quiet as a whisper. Silent as a whisper? Quiet as a whisper.
Loud as a whisper.
Loud as a... God, it was the opposite.
Loud as a whisper. Yes, loud as a whisper. The obligatory disability episode, I guess.
Yeah.
This was basically another piece of genius from the old mailroom. Much in the vein of our Sherlock episodes, we had this guy, which obviously our audience will know from watching this episode, Howie Seago, who for nearly since the inception of the show was sending us mail just relentlessly about how no character on the show had any like real disabilities. And I don't want to really make this judgment myself because look, you got Geordi's blindness, which is very real. Picard's baldness, Troy being a woman. These are all things you notice immediately. And obviously they color the perception of the characters that were written to interact with them. It's all out there. So I don't know where he gets off making that assertion, but what I guess it comes down to though is the little babies over the NAD, it felt like they deserved more explicit representation.
Yeah, there was no subtlety to how it was to the representation in this episode. Explicit's the right way to put it.
Right. And so you had the producers, the suits, and they don't really know anything. They see this stuff and they are basically looking down the barrel of a disastrous media campaign. And so it's do we just air an episode about a deaf guy just to get this off our backs? And that's what we did. And I'm not afraid to say this because they can't even hear me right now.
Well, the thing about an episode with a deaf a deaf character, is that you kind of put somebody on easy street. It ended up being Seago himself, but when we initially were putting out the casting call for this, our casting director was an absolute moron and advertised a part for a deaf mute character. And when you're in the business, everybody knows what a boon this is. I don't have to talk, I don't have to act with my voice. And tons of people just knocking down our door to get the role. Absolutely ridiculous. And it makes sense. I get it. I don't blame them. I blame the casting director again for the advertisement he put out for the fucking role. But the thing about it is that it did end up panning out that way. Riva is the name of the character, and Riva has the best performance of any guest actor we have ever had or would have since then. All because he doesn't have to say anything.
No, he doesn't. He kind of just stands there and flails his arms around.
Right.
Makes an angry face here and there. Yeah, it's honestly, it's inspiring.
Yeah, I think he won an Emmy that year.
As he should have. He should have. So how did you feel about this episode in general?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I can go first if you want.
No, it's fine. I must go first. My ego won't let me go second. I thought it was fine. I can't say I was actively engaged through the entire thing, but there was no point of it that was insulting to me or my intelligence like so many other episodes are.
Right.
And at this point, I'll chalk that up as the positive that it is. The idea of a conflict mediator who has a fundamentally different form of communication is an interesting idea. Now, I wish that the conflict itself had been given a little more attention, because it just seems like incredibly arbitrary and a little bit immature might be the best way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like two animals are fighting, and someone walks by and picks up a cat and just places it in its box, and it's like, all right, this conflict has been mediated.
Yeah. That's a good description of it. Yes.
But overall, I think it was fine. I would give this, like, I don't know, grading on a curve for where we are in the show, I'd give this like a 6 out of 10. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I'd probably say the same thing. Lots of time spent on kind of stupid stuff. As usual, we're still pretty clumsy in the way that conflicts pan out, and the way these episodes are structured, really. But at its core, it's got a cool idea, and I like the idea of an episode centered on mediation, and that there's this famous mediator. I mean, not really something that you consider in the 21st century as kind of a pathway to celebrity. But you have this mediator who basically everyone knows, because he's so good at bringing about these peaceful conclusions to these conflicts. And I think following something like that in general is just a really cool idea.
Well, it's nice because that gels really well with our idea of the Federation and society at this time, where within itself war is kind of is entirely obsolete, and it's only with outside forces that we see armed conflict. So the idea of a conflict mediator being such a high status person makes a lot of sense for a society that has completely embraced peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I would say I agree with you. We're probably going to get into the nitty-gritty of the weird stuff that happens, but
no, we're just going to end the episode here.
I mean, we might as well. What is there to talk about? We start off the episode with
we say it. Just say it.
What?
I say it. I know. I think I know what you're going to say. Just say it.
I don't think you know what I'm going to say, but Riker does this thing.
Okay.
Where he rubs his beard with his index finger.
That's
Did you notice this?
No, I didn't, but that's also good.
I was hoping that was what you were thinking about too, but I guess not. Tell me what you were thinking about.
I was thinking about Picard saying cluck, cluck, cluck. like a chicken. Because Riker says something to Picard, something slightly nagging, and Picard's response is cluck, cluck, cluck.
Right. You're being what does he call him?
A hen?
A mother hen?
Yeah.
You're being a mother hen. What a weird exchange. They never talk like that to each other.
No. Picard is never like petty or snarky, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's snark.
It's like, oh god, Picard, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do my fucking job.
Right.
I'm only second in command. I guess I'll just, leave you to slump down in your chair and steer us all into death, asshole.
we also have a choice line from Riker, where he says, "Our job is not to police the galaxies," which any diligent fan will know that's basically quoted from the Trek Bible, and that rule was basically broken last season, right? So
as they policed the galaxy several times.
Yeah, it's a fun little callback. Maybe they were trying to reestablish the rule.
Yeah, but then they would go on to police the galaxy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not in this episode, but just in the future. It's difficult to make threats, antagonists that don't involve the Enterprise playing intergalactic police. Or I guess just intragalactic police.
I suppose so.
So I don't know. Like I get that you don't want them the Enterprise to be this group of superheroes that goes around putting down evil all the time, but it's a difficult rule to keep because it involves a lot of tacit. I say tacit a lot. It involves a lot of approval of evil things. It's like where you see somebody who's doing something a bit morally off, but you can't just stop them because you don't really have cause to.
And that's the thing. I mean, it hinges on this idea that morality is subjective, where it's like, yeah, I mean, if you look at it from the point of view of like some omniscient God, maybe that's true. But as human beings, as you know, these primitive thinking things that we are, we can't really live without some kind of objective morality.
Well, I like the idea of the moral subject or moral relativity that
I would agree
that it has, and sometimes it works really well. I really like that episode with we watched it recently. The two planets that are involved in like a drug trade dealer junkie relationship.
Yeah, you like that, I remember. Right,
and that one hits that moral relativism really well, in that Picard sees what's going on, he adheres to Federation regulations, and he doesn't step in to stop it, but he does, by inaction, create a chain of events that eventually will collapse the system, which is a great recognition of the, again, moral relativism code that they live by, while also centering things around the audience's moral sensibilities, in that, okay, well, this won't be going on forever. Our heroes aren't happy about it, and they do what they can to stop it, even though it's going to lead to more suffering that they couldn't stop it earlier based on their moral code.
Sure.
That's just more interesting to me than clear, they're evil, we're going to stop them.
Well, right, but that's the thing, is that when this subjectivity comes into play, it's always centered around this idea of the prime directive, where if a character is making moral decisions outside the context of that objective, they tend to be a little more, you know, in line with what you would expect, and that does happen in Star Trek, where, you know, there is this idea of good and evil to some degree. But if it were always an issue of the prime directive, then every episode would be them getting into the middle of a conflict and saying we can't do anything at all, you know?
Yeah, well, we've talked about how the prime directive is misapplied, and I think that happens very, very often.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a spacefaring society, then the prime directive doesn't matter. That's not what it's designed to cover. And very often, characters are quoted as referring to the prime directive at inappropriate times. So you can write stories where the Enterprise crew encounters another society, whether in space or on their home planet, and their moral response is not bound by the prime directive. What I'm getting at is that the problem with the stories and their use of morality is not the moral code that the characters are written to have, but rather just weak writing in general. And when you have weak writers dealing with a pretty nuanced code that the main characters have, it's very difficult to execute well. But I don't think that's a problem with the code itself. I just wish it could have been handled better more frequently.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, as you said, there are those episodes where they kind of do need to be the quote police.
Yes, it's
not easy to just completely relinquish that.
Certain pills are easier to swallow than others. For example, if there was just a culture that went around obliterating planets or destroying entire cities on their planet wantonly, it's a lot more difficult to watch Picard see this and then to say, well, there's nothing we can do. because it involves the loss of thousands and thousands of lives very actively and immediately. It's abiding by the same code, but as the audience, it's more difficult to accept that than something like the drug trade episode, which ostensibly had everybody surviving, even under the current system. It was just a matter of financial exploitation.
Yeah, they they even came back later for the novels. So
right.
Yeah, so we know that ended happily, or actually I think it didn't. But
well, who knows? Nobody read the novel.
Yeah,
but it's the severity of the crime they're policing matters, and
right.
I think the writers would have done well to just steer clear of these very, very obscenely clear cases of evil. And where the Enterprise's hands are tied.
Well, I know we got a lot of mail about the episode where the Enterprise had those two delegates on, right? And it turns out one of them ate meat.
Right.
And we got a lot of mail about how ridiculous it was that the Enterprise didn't execute that entire group of delegates from that race for eating meat. A lot of mail.
Well, the Enterprise is known for two things: keeping peace in their their space wherever they inhabit, and public executions.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a big offense, when it comes to the West Coast, California. This is where vegetarianism began.
So that kind of social commentary on things that run afoul in our society of the Federation's way of life are pretty clearly meant to be looked down on.
But in any case, I did not mean to go on a tangent that probably added 20 minutes to our runtime.
It's okay. We never really go on tangents. It's nice to have one once in a while. So we're talking about
where were we?
Loud as a Whisper.
Quiet as a Whisper.
What?
Quiet as a Whisper.
Really?
Yeah.
God damn. So I think this episode has the worst cut to the opening of all time.
Dude, yes. I wrote that down. What the hell was that cut to opening?
What is it again? They land on the planet, see nothing, and then cut?
There might be a sting, like a little musical sting, maybe.
But apropos of nothing, right?
Yes, it just cuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so vexed when I saw this. This is the kind of thing you don't remember 20, 30, 40 years later, whatever it is.
Right.
Just what a bizarre... Because it's written into the scripts where the cuts are for commercial and such. So while writing, they knew that this would happen here, and it's just so strange.
Yeah, it's really odd. And so this is, they land on the planet to meet Riva, right?
Right.
And so Troy's only use this episode is just to be sexualized, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, this is an episode of TNG, so that's kind of par for the course.
Yeah. When did she get that new outfit? Because I think I've been kind of overlooking it.
I think that was episode 1 of this season.
Of the season?
Yeah, she started putting her hair down.
Right. You can really tell just how offended the producers were by her broad shoulders.
Very broad shoulders.
Yeah, extremely broad. So, we had to slip her into something skin tight to show off what little hips she had.
I think a use of a corset was involved.
It had to have been.
Produce some amount of hip ratio out of Arena Sirtis.
Yeah. So Riva only speaks to Troy with his his libido.
Right. Right. Which is kind of something you wouldn't notice until you're looking for it, or you've seen the episode before and you're more familiar with these avatars that he has to. Because each one conveys a different element of his personality, different emotions. And by using only the libido, Riva doesn't interact with Troy with like any of his more emotional faculties, his creativity or his sympathy or his empathy. It's just libido. And the character, the avatar himself says, "I am the libido." So it's very, very clear.
Right.
So if I were you in the audience, I would go back and watch this episode with an eye to what part of Riva speaks to which characters. And there's some interesting details about how Riva views the crew that are revealed in that way. And I'll leave those to the listener to find out on their own, but
yeah,
you're right.
It's all very subtle. It's all very.
Which, if I had to describe TNG in a
or
word,
something.
I'm sorry. Could you say that one more time?
Wait. Say what one more time now?
I think the recording screwed up. I missed a little bit of what you were just saying.
Oh! I said it's like a Star Trek version of reading Flat World.
Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is.
Lots of fun little subtleties that you don't really notice the first time through. Thanks to these aspects of Riva's.
So the thing is that with Riva, they spend so much time introducing the 3 translators that he has, interpreters, and then there's a whole bunch more time spent on introducing them to the cast, the crew. And this scene goes on for so long.
Yes.
It's bizarre how long
it's annoying. It's annoying the degree to which they basically stand up there on their little pedestal and tell you exactly what they're supposed to represent.
Yes. Yeah, oh my god. It's so on the nose.
It is. And I feel like we say that every episode, something is on the nose, but it literally is the case that with Star Trek, everything is on the nose. Well, I don't understand why it has to be that way.
We already referenced the libido, and the fact that a character says, "I am the libido. I am here for the sexual urges and the passion." It's like, thanks, I had no idea what the libido was. Thank you for making that clear.
The other 2 were just as bad.
Oh, certainly. The one, he calls himself the scholar. He's like creativity and knowledge and such. And what was the woman's title?
I forget.
Well, she's a white woman, so probably the empath.
John Delancey's wife.
Oh wait, no, I do have it written down here. Harmony. But you're right. That is John Delancey's wife. That's astounding.
That is John Delancey's wife, and I guess we're gonna have to go on another tangent real quick because of that.
Well, I do enjoy Delancey adjacent tangents.
Yeah, I mean our most popular episodes are Delancey episodes, so.
Yeah, it's fun to see the viewer numbers on those just like triple every other episode. Right,
because he is a character, and here in this season is kind of when you start to see his influence grow on the series. So, God, where to start? One day, we were doing a table read for this episode, right? And he shows up out of nowhere, just interrupts the read, storms right through the door, stands right in front of Jean and says, more like screams, "You will hire my wife." And I mean, you remember this. We were all kind of just stunned.
As an aside, anybody out there, you don't want John Delancey screaming at you over anything. No. He's a very, very fierce individual with a lot of presence,
especially with that proximity.
Yes,
it was I would go so far as to say I was scared.
I mean, he's just right in your face. He's kind of getting some spittle on you. His breath always smells like sausages. It's very, very intense.
Yeah, very weird. But yeah, so he yells again. You will hire my wife, and I think it was Maurice, right?
I think
Who
Maurice.
he tries to explain to him. We'd already done the casting. This is how TV works. And Delancey just responds, "Well, fine. I guess I'm not playing Q then. Guess I'm just not going to be Q anymore." And we couldn't have that.
Well, this was the problem. Once we acquiesced here, then John Delancey knew he had this trump card to get anything.
That was it. Yeah. So from here on out, it was basically just anything goes with this guy. But Gene, he whips his head around the room and he points to this girl, and she was a complete no name. I don't think she did anything.
Now this is gonna be your big break. But...
Yeah, so much for that. Gene points to her and he has security escort her out, and she's crying, and suddenly Marnie, John Delancey's wife, she's got the job, and for nearly all of filming, Delancey would stand up next to the director's wheelchair, and he just, every time his wife was delivering her lines, he would just pace back and forth, just cursing to himself. And I could never really make out what he was saying, but every now and then he would yell "cut" on his own, and the action would stop. And he'd go up to his wife and he'd whisper something in her ear, and she would just turn completely white.
Well, I guess that's the benefit of living with John. You get these private acting lessons from one of the greats.
Well, you do, and he was kind of like at the top of his craft, so hard to blame him.
Yeah, it's kind of she became, I don't know, his protege, and it's amazing to see the performance that she turned in, and to know how much of that was due to probably all the practice that she got in at home.
Definitely.
It's amazing.
I know she did a lot of physical training as well at home for this role, because every now and then, you remember, she'd come in and she'd have like a bruise on her arm, or
or
like on her face. Sometimes you say, I fell, I was trying to do like
stunt work,
like a flip or something. Yeah. So Delancey definitely had her doing a lot for this role, and it did turn out good. And one of the I guess more mysterious things about his activity, I guess, in the production of this episode was when he saw the final edit of the episode, the scene where she gets disintegrated. He must have had the boys play it back several dozen times, because he would just double over in laughter, just exclaiming how perfect the scene was. There was something he loved about that disintegration scene, and it makes you wonder exactly what he was going for when he walked into that table read.
Yeah, we always say that John works in mysterious ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. He's a very mysterious man. I will say that he was not the only one captivated by that skeleton scene.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where in Hollywood there's an homage to that scene?
Can't say I do.
So I can't blame you if you haven't seen this movie. It's like, why would you? But in the early 2000s, I believe, they released a film adaptation of the Spider-Man comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And in that movie, there's a scene where 3 people are turned to skeletons in the blink of an eye. And it's almost the exact same shot. They kind of recoil back, they turn to skeletons, and then the bones fall down. It's a very, very direct visual homage to TNG.
That is uncanny.
Yeah, and it's in a major motion picture. Like, that was a high budget, heavily marketed, highly successful film.
Yeah, I remember my son wanted to go to that.
Right. And it's always cool to me to see the effects our work has on the public zeitgeist, where because we made TNG, Spider-Man was a successful film.
Yes, that's exactly how I would put it. Yes, it's quite the domino effect.
So it's a domino effect of the butterfly effect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we flapped
they
we
compound
flapped
on
our
each
wings back in the 80s, and in the early 2000s they made a film about a human spider.
Rakes had his onion bagels, and the rest is history.
Exactly. You change one thing. You know, you change the onion bagels to an everything bagel, which has onions, but it also has other things. And who knows what would be different.
Suddenly his testosterone levels are all off.
Right, and without that, he doesn't do the chair thing. And without the chair thing, people tune out of the show, and we don't get a season 3.
Right.
And because there's no season 3, there's no Admiral Jennings. And without any Admiral, the chain reactions goes on and on.
All right, well, let me stop you before you get too into Admiral Jennings again, Mitch.
I know you have to stop me.
I know you love him, but we're going to be talking about him a lot more as Picard starts kind of wrapping up and the audience gets to see it. So there will be time for that. But let's return to we were discussing Riva's interpreters.
Right, in as normal volume as a whisper.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, and how just horribly disrespectful to the audience they really are.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, like we were saying, they announce exactly what they're for. There's no mystery left, or no interpretation left up to the audience at all.
Right. Which is strange that so much time is spent laying out explicitly who these people are and what the facets of his personality that they represent.
Right.
When they ultimately end up dying as skeletons.
Yes, and not only that, but they do nothing that one person couldn't have done.
Yeah, that's true too. It's one of those things that was in the conception phase, and like, oh, what if we did this? And get different people speaking for different parts of his personality, and someone's like, yeah, that sounds cool. And they have all these ideas floating around, and then whenever it comes time to actually write the script, that's kind of tossed by the wayside. Because you can imagine a lot of different versions of this script that use that well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly.
And this just isn't
it
one
could
of
have
them.
been something that even came into play during the actual conflict mediation, but instead it's basically just to single out the one avatar as the sex guy,
Right.
so we can have a lot of awkward Troy scenes.
Well, that was originally gonna be like taken to the nth degree, Star Trek reference. So the idea was that, and we filmed this scene, that Riva and Troy would make love, and Libido would just kind of be there standing in the corner of the room watching to voice Riva's, pleasure.
Right.
But, it's not that difficult to imagine why, but this episode ended up being cut by the censors. But you can check it out on the DVD. Highly recommend it. That's some of Marina's best acting, I think, throughout the series.
Yes. I've watched it a few times myself. Superb acting.
And I think it's nice for the audience because they can kind of self-insert as Libido in that scene.
Right. Which is probably something they have a lot of experience with to begin with. So it's a really great way to kind of get your first step into the Star Trek world. Agreed.
Although if you already have the DVD, then it's probably not your first step into Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Trek into step.
It's probably too late for you.
Indeed. And if you're listening to this podcast, I have bad news.
So yeah, upon rewatch, I did think that was where that was going in the the aired episode as well, when he brings the guy to their little date, and then just kind of dismisses him. So there was no reason to bring him in the first place,
Right.
and somehow Troy can understand the sign language.
It's weird. This is solely in the episode as a setup for the conclusion.
Yeah.
But unto the situation itself, it doesn't really make much sense. The idea is like, okay, you can understand feelings even if you can't understand exact words. And if he so truly believed that, then what is the point of bringing this cartel of interpreters along with you everywhere?
Well, not everyone is a Betazoid.
Truer words have never been spoken. That scene, once Libido leaves, it is a nice showcase of Sego's talents. I believe before he had this role, he had a job as a shadow puppeteer, which really led to a lot of his sign language improvisation, which you could barely tell was improv. Which
it was extremely convincing.
Contributed to his Emmy, I like to believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. I think it's honestly, while I was watching it, I thought it was very, very Japanese sign language adjacent.
That's a very specific reference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was clearly influenced by, kind of the Oriental arts in a lot of ways, I think. Really outstanding performance. I would agree with that. Oh wait, no. Let me go back to this point. Why is Troy always so okay with getting railed by whoever steps onto the ship?
Yeah, it's a good question. I like how her sexual tension with Riker just kind of comes and goes as it's convenient. Sometimes,
nothing happened this episode.
Sometimes Riker is banging down the door to make sure that no hanky panky goes on her dates, and sometimes he just does not give a shit at all about what's happening.
Yes.
All the while, Troy just never has any agency in all of this. She's just like, oh well, I guess I'm pregnant now, or
well, I guess I have to get fucked. I mean, he asked me to. He's eating dinner with me. I guess the canon explanation would be that Riker clearly has a side piece right now. So
does he?
He's spinning plates, as they say.
They do say that.
Yeah. So he's practicing, not really giving a shit.
Good for Riker.
Yeah.
They say something about keys and locks.
Yeah.
Like what you put on a bagel. Locks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they say that I'm keyed and you're locked.
I thought it was the opposite.
I don't think so, Mitch.
Dang. So I have just non sequitur here. I have a few things I want to point out of just kind of absurd dialogue moments in this episode. There's one where the warring factions are shooting at each other, and Riva makes his appearance for the first time for them, and he says, "Stop shooting," and they say, "Okay." And they stop. Yep. Like, okay, well, mediating conflict, very easy job. There's another one where they're trying to cure Riva of his condition, and Pulaski makes her only appearance in the episode to come on the bridge and say, "I can't do shit about this," and then she leaves, which is hilarious to me.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Sure.
When they beam down to the planet at the beginning of the episode, I think it's John Delancey's wife who says that Riva lacks the gene for hearing.
Yes.
Whereas when Pulaski talks about it, she's talking about it in the context of his brain wouldn't understand audio signals at all. Which these seem to be at odds with each other because I took the liberty of looking up what the gene for hearing is.
What a
And
professional.
It's it's just a genetic lack of the gene that just causes you to be unable to mechanically hear, I believe. I don't think it would have anything to do with not being able to process sound.
Right. It's not a neurological thing.
Yeah.
It's a
So
genetic
it
thing.
sounds like it's just a convenient but horribly written way for Pulaski to not be able to do anything.
The thing about that is, it strikes me as completely unnecessary because I don't think anybody's in the audience, their reaction to deafness is just go to the doctor. Like,
Right.
Nobody's gonna expect, well, there's a doctor on ship, so she can just cure his deafness, right? I mean, granted, doctors in the past have revived the dead, so I could be off base here.
There's that, and then it's also, you have kind of the related blindness affliction, which in this future of Star Trek, has been somewhat fixed with the mechanism. So, you have the related trio of blind, deaf, and dumb, right?
Right.
And they fix blindness. They don't seem to have fixed deafness. Or maybe they have, and it's just that this brain thing that Pulaski's talking about is, again, a convenient way for them to kind of sidestep the issue and continue along with the conflict as written. But have they fixed dumbness?
Well, Riker's still farting around, so who knows if they fixed it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's Worf, too.
Yeah, in fact, it might have gotten worse to the point where people like Worf are in such high positions.
Right. Yeah, so that's dumb. Please continue.
There's the part where Picard grabs a deaf man by the face and screams, "Listen to me," right in his face.
Yep.
Thoroughly enjoyed that. And I think that's it for my stupid dialogue moments from this episode.
Yeah.
Having already covered cluck, cluck, cluck.
Yeah. You picked up some good ones for sure.
Always the high point of doing these shows for me.
Right. Yeah. No. Certainly. It's amazing how many of these get past the eyes of God, like a dozen people.
Right. How do you feel about the parallel Geordi plot line in this episode? I struggle to call
barely
it a
plot line.
Yeah.
It's a random scene stuck like in the middle as a non sequitur, which as you know, it does have a story behind it as well. But it's just it shouldn't have even been in there.
No, it shouldn't have. And there's so many things in the main plot that could have used more time that it does feel like it detracts from everything. Right.
And I guess maybe if there was some kind of payoff going forward of like, oh, Geordi's going to get eyes.
Yeah.
Then it would have been fine. But, that could have been kind of relegated to its own episode as well.
Yeah, people like to praise Geordi storylines for never really just being about him being blind, which is fair, and that's a good thing, but I don't think you can have that praise while also acknowledging scenes like this, which are wholly unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to bat for this scene.
No.
And ultimately, it was just kind of like a makeup thing, kind of a bone thrown to Gates, which I guess while we're talking about it, I might as well go over it, because it does relate to a story that many people have heard, a story that everyone knows, of course. The Will Wheaton story, the Will Wheaton Bill Shatner story.
If you haven't heard this, by the way, you're in for a treat.
Yes. So I'm gonna truncate the actual story that everyone has heard from Will Wheaton. Let's just say he at the same time we were filming many episodes at the beginning of season 2, there was filming for Star Trek V, the film, in the adjacent lot.
Was that the Wrath of Khan?
No, that was the Wayward Home.
Like a home that goes to different places.
That's gone. Like it is lost.
I see. I have never seen these movies.
Yeah, I've seen them all a few times. But Bill Shatner was directing this one, and as Will tells the story, he was starstruck, and he went over, and Bill was, I guess, not as kind as Will would have liked him to be. But really, so Bill's response to meeting Will was, I would never have a kid on my bridge, which, as an assertion is completely understandable. I mean, it's ludicrous that there is a child on the bridge.
Right. It really takes you out of the story when you begin to think about it.
Out of the story, yeah. It's got to be like a breach of several protocols, don't you think?
Well, that's spoken to at the very beginning of the series, where Wesley comes on the bridge and Picard's like, "Get the fuck out of here! What are you doing?"
Right. And then all of a sudden, it's okay. Which is mad. I mean, Bill was really just kind of stating a fact, I think. So, that's that. Will was kind of left distraught after his hero Bill did not recognize him as the star ensign that he thought he was. But what Will doesn't tell everyone is that his little stunt kicked off what would be several weeks of torment from the original cast under Bill's orders to try to sabotage our production. Basically, what happened was the whole cast of TNG kind of came to bat for Will against Bill Shatner, and he didn't like that. So a couple days after Will had gone over their set, they being the original cast, snuck over to our lot right before filming, and they kidnapped Gates,
who at the time, in case anybody hasn't seen the past few episodes, was playing the role of Pulaski.
Right, she was all done up as Pulaski, and they brought her over to their lot, tied her up in a chair, and every day they would mail us a tape of Bill performing in character with her. Using the word performing lightly, of course.
Very traumatic tapes, but at the same time, I think they were submitted for an Emmy consideration.
They were, and if you've ever seen, in vein of our superhero talk earlier, if you've ever seen The Dark Knight, you'll know what I'm talking about. Those tapes were actually based on this as well. They're easily available on the internet, maybe YouTube. But if not, you can probably find them on Vimeo.
They were on LiveLeak, but I think that website has gone under.
Yes. At any rate, you can probably find them. But so the whole issue at the time was Gene refused to call the police.
We begged him.
Yeah, well, he was always threatening the producers with shutting down production of one or the other or both of these Star Trek. These Star Trek things, and obviously we couldn't have that, because it would have been, well, what are you going to do without Gene? It would have been an entire waste of money. We wouldn't have been able to release anything. So he was adamant. He was like, I'll go talk to Bill. And eventually we did get her back. We got Gates back, but by the time we did, we'd already finished filming the majority of the show. So Larry, the director, basically had to make this up to her last minute by adding this irrelevant scene with LeVar that we were just talking about. And no one was really happy about it. Like, Larry didn't come back ever, and not just because of the wheelchair.
Although that was a part of it.
That was a part of it, as it usually is. But yeah, so that's why we have this kind of non sequitur just kind of pasted in there. No real reason for it to be there. It's just so that Gates could get more screen time.
which she earned, I like to think.
Yeah, well, yeah, she did put in the work for sure. She put in a lot of work, a lot of extracurricular work.
There's
this time.
a lot of members of the cast where I kind of roll my eyes at throwing them a bone because of my misgivings with them or their work or whatever it is. But I always found Gates to be pretty agreeable, both in her output and her being, her personality.
Yeah, and the way she looked.
Yeah, I quite like the way she looked.
Mm-hmm.
Not the way she looks, but the way she looked.
The way she looked, yes. She was a looker.
Right. Now she's just a looked.
Yeah.
Very, very traumatic episode, now that I'm thinking about it. A lot.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
How do you feel about the very end of the episode, where they just leave Riva on the planet for what is going to be months and months of work, and he's not even made contact with the two warring nations yet. He's just waiting for them, and maybe they might just kill him, who knows, and the Enterprise is just pieces out.
Yes, that would definitely breach protocol, I would imagine.
Didn't follow Proto.
I did not appreciate that. They did not follow Proto.
It was very strange, and it struck me just as a incredibly bizarre moment.
Yes.
Weird.
Very clearly, we just had to finish up the episode.
Oh, there is. Speaking of, we just had to finish it quickly, and who gives a shit? There's another moment I forgot to mention where Riva's alone in a room. Picard enters it, calls out to him with his voice, and then Riva turns to Picard, having heard his voice and knowing he's there.
Yes. Well, maybe he heard he felt the vibrations in the air.
Oh, I see. His Daredevil-esque sensory
right
powers.
Again, superheroes. A lot of superhero influence in this episode. We do need to discuss how he attends the meeting to kind of go over what the conflict is, and then within Picard's first two sentences stands up and says, "That's it, I'm
sign language, I wrote sight language, which is a very interesting interpretation of what's happening.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it is kind of the same thing, isn't it?
It is. It's language by sight. And, not everything's a sign, so I like mine better. Take that.
We should start calling it that.
American Sight Language, ASL.
American Sight Language, yeah.
Back in my day, ASL meant something really different.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I won't get into that too much here, but, if you guys know at home, if you know what AIM is, or Yahoo, then you might be on the same wavelength.
Yeah. And, of course, the lower the A, the better.
Right. This actually dovetails really well with, again, our Admiral Jennings discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Where, if you had this been a digital encounter and, Jennings asks Wesley ASL, it would have been a very natural, realistic storyline.
It would have been. It would have been like a Seinfeld in the modern day kind of episode.
Indeed. That's a very, very good analogy.
Mm-hmm. I thought so too. But keep your pants on with Admiral Jennings, Mitch.
I know if I
want to keep talking about.
If I blow my veritable load here, then we're not going to have any material for our Picard 2 podcast.
Right. In fact, we might just have a very special Admiral Jennings episode.
I could fill one without, no offense to you, but without you and just me, I could talk for 45 an hour about Admiral Jennings. There's a lot to
I'm
cover.
sure you could. Well, maybe that's one for the Patreon.
Ooh, for our patron ensigns.
You can do a little monologue.
Yeah, I'll think about this and
an oral history of Admiral Jennings.
I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah. As much as I want to do a monologue, I might just get the actor to come on with me. I don't know. But
oh yeah. There you go.
That's we got that in the oven now. It's percolating. We'll see if the yeast rises. The yeast also rises.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just gonna say it. The best scene in this episode, as we mentioned before, is the skeleton scene. That's the actual the visual climax of Trek as a franchise, and I won't hear otherwise.
The best visual representation for it nowadays would be if they picked up the skeletons and attached strings to them and started playing them like puppets.
Yeah. Maybe one of the skeletons starts tapping on its ribcage like a xylophone.
Yeah. But as of right now, yes, that is the if we're placing ourselves back in the 80s, you are correct about that.
Overall, I don't know. I'm wrapping things up. Do you have anything else you want to say about this episode?
No, I think we kind of there's really little to talk about with this one.
There is. That's why this episode has been an hour and 20 minutes so far.
It's an okay episode. It's not super offensive. I would say watch. If I were making one of those charts that tells people what to watch from what season, I guess this would be under the watch if you kind of like Star Trek.
This would be in my Troy collection.
Mm-hmm.
The Troy episodes. I would put this this in there. But no, I can't. I don't think I can recommend this one in good faith, just in general. Again, I feel like I say this every week, but there's only so much time in our lives, and spending 45 minutes on Still as a Whisper is just not a good investment.
Right. Yeah.
You can skip.
I suppose.
Alongside this episode, in the show notes, I'll post the time code for the skeleton scene. Go watch that, and you can skip the rest.
Yeah, that is the highlight for sure. You are correct, but yeah. So I guess that's Bright as a Whisper.
Right. You have a question for me?
Oh yeah, you have a question. Hold on. Let me try to remember it here.
I'm just so
Okay.
excited to be asked the question.
So, which actor in this episode, and this is gender neutral, by the way,
Okay.
gender neutral actor, which actor this episode?
Does this include envies?
Yeah, of course. NBs
Okay.
are valid.
Okay. Just had to make sure.
Which actor this episode would go on in the 2010s to create a YouTube series called Taste This, a cooking channel where his or her popular catchphrase was "So lemony."
Wow, I feel like this is a question coming to me from an alternate universe, an alternate timeline. I know Brent has done some YouTube stuff, but I don't think it was a cooking show. I think he just did like a Curb inspired show.
Yeah, he did a weird Curb thing.
Yeah. I know John Delancey has done a lot of YouTube content, but he wasn't actually in this episode. He was just around this episode.
Right.
Jeez. Now, if John is doing YouTube content, then he might let his wife also do YouTube content, which makes her a possibility. I'm gonna put a thumbtack in that and come back to it. I don't think it would be Seago, because Howie's just kind of like a yokel name. I don't know if he can really grasp YouTube.
Yeah, he's also deaf.
Right. So it wouldn't be like So Lemony. It'd be like, "Oh, lemony," right?
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus. Libido guy looks like he'd be stuck in the 80s with that vaguely mullet haircut, so it can't be him. Who else is in? If it's one of the guys in the makeup playing the aliens, I will never forgive you.
It's not one of the guys in the makeup playing the aliens.
Okay, good.
It's someone with actual presence in the episode, actual lines.
All right, I can't think of a more compelling argument than Delancey's wife, so I'm gonna say Delancey's wife.
Delancey's wife. It is actually Libido.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, his YouTube channel, Taste This, gets several hundred views per video.
Wow, several hundred?
And he did drop it within like 20 videos.
Now, did he bill it himself as a guy who was on TNG?
I don't think so. But the way I found out about this is from his Memory Alpha page, where it is very clear that the actor himself wrote about his YouTube channel. Because it says, his popular catchphrase, "So lemony," with 3 exclamation points, has become one of the fans' favorite quotes.
I've never heard that from a fan.
No. I haven't heard that from any of the 600 fans who have watched his cooking channel.
Well, here's the thing. On most Wikipedia-inspired sites, you can see who is doing the editing, right? It logs the IP address. So we could... I believe that's true. So we can do some investigative journalism, if we ever have some free time, and kind of nail this bastard.
Yeah, let's dox him.
Yeah. So Lemony.
Piece of shit.
Speaking of, there's an author named Lemony Snicket.
Lemony Snicket?
Yes.
That just sounds gross.
Yes, it is. And I wonder if the catchphrase was an allusion to that author.
Like, oh, that's very lemony. Like how you say that's Kafka-esque.
Exactly. So he might be more heady than we think.
Right. I mean, if he's a well-read man, then far be it from us to be this critical of him.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Lemony Snicket's line of work, but well-read people would be very, very intimately familiar with it.
Yeah. See, I don't even know about Lemony. Is it him? Her?
It's a male author. Not to not to tread on their
assume.
Yeah. But that's my impression.
So I'm unfamiliar with it, and I'm not very well read myself. So he must be
this tracks.
kind of in the upper echelons of philosophical thought.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where your first reading of this catchphrase is like, oh my god, it's so cheesy, and then once you put the pieces together, a newfound respect really starts to emerge. Like, oh, he's read Lemony Snicket. Oh man, that's
right.
It kind of makes me want to go watch his series just to see the types of situations, because knowing what would be described as Lemony, those are very, very interesting scenarios that he must be getting himself into on this YouTube cooking show.
Well, what would be described as Lemony?
So I would say that anything that deals with an uncertainty of reality, it's kind of like a gaslighting thing, but instead of somebody else gaslighting you, it's more of self-driven, where somebody's idea of their own reality starts to break down in more subtle, less obvious ways. Things that I would describe as Lemony often involve a lot of theory crafting on the part of the reader to ascertain exactly where these breakdowns are happening, because when it's not involving somebody else gaslighting a character that are more obvious, okay, this person's lying about this, that, and the other thing, it is a lot less clear of what is supposed to be the rub in this case. So to describe something as Lemony and to accurately suss out Lemony situations, one must have a very, very good and clear grasp of a character, their environment, and their motivations. So very active reading and a lot of, like I said, theory crafting. So if you like
and theory crafting is, of course, extremely important.
Right. And if you like to have this active participation in the media and the stories that you consume, Lemony-esque stories are for you, I think.
So to bring this back to TNG, would you say, for example, Frame of Mind?
Yes.
Lemony-esque?
Yes, I would. There's not a lot of TNG episodes that would accurately be described as Lemony, but that's certainly one of them. And it kind of tracks where the longer, for example, our discussions are on an episode, the more likely it is to be Lemony. That's not 100% correlated, but there is a slight correlation there.
I see. Well, we should keep a lookout for Lemony situations.
Yes.
In Trek going forward. And I think I do have a new appreciation for this actor, Leo Damian. Good job, Leo. I'm sufficiently inspired, and I think I will be watching his cooking show.
Should we give him a cut of the profits for our So Lemony t-shirt?
No.
Yeah, I agree. He can earn them if he really wants them.
Yeah.
All right, so that's going to be a wrap on our episode, Hard as a Whisper. Join us next week where we talk about the next episode of Star Trek Next Generation, whatever it is or is not. And until then, everybody, I implore you to search deep, deep, deep within yourself. Find your happy place. Stay there. And, as always, stay ready.
The troublesome little man-child.
Consider that in the history of many worlds, there have always been disposable creatures.
Do you consider yourself superior to us?
Should have told him to mind his own damn business.
the beard thusly? Do I not appear more intellectual?
Computer, freeze program.
It's not a promising beginning.